I'm going to start on time, which I hardly ever do, just because we're about full here. Anyway, people can wander in as they want. So I'm going to dive right into it. Oh, what I usually do these days is fairly short monologue to start with, and then I like to get into back and forth. Because if I was just going to preach at you, you could just watch a YouTube video. The more interesting, useful things is when we can have back and forth and people can ask stuff and throw the discussion in whatever direction they want. But I usually start with fairly short monologue so people get the general gist of what I'm saying, and so we don't have to discuss and debate the terminology of what we're even talking about. So I'm just going to dive in. A guy shows up at your front door, and he says, "Hey, I'm new in town, and can I have a few minutes here of your day so I can tell you about some services I provide?" And you say, "I'm kind of busy." And he says, "It'll only take a few minutes, and I promise you that when I'm done, you will be sure that you simply cannot live without the services I provide." And you say, "All right, this is going to be a waste of time, but what services do you provide?" And he says, "Well, we decide on a case-by-case basis what services we think you need. Now, maybe it's we give you food, maybe it's we help you with housing, maybe it's we help your neighbor, maybe it's we help protect you, but we decide what services you need." And you're already kind of suspicious, like, why would I let you decide what services I need? And you say, "Well, this sounds kind of fishy. Well, how much does this cost?" And he says, "Well, we decide as we go along on a regular basis how much we're going to charge you for it. And the price may fluctuate here and there." And you say, "Okay, I don't think I'm interested. It sounds too vague. I can't even tell what you're going to do for me or what it's going to cost me, so no thanks." He says, "Okay, maybe I wasn't clear. We don't ask your permission exactly. You have to pay us the price that we say it's going to cost you for the services that we're going to decide to provide you." And you say, "What do you mean I have to?" I don't have to pay your services." "Well, there will be adverse consequences if you don't." "Well, do you just mean my life won't be as good if I don't hire you, or are you threatening me?" "Well, I don't call it a threat. See, if we don't all work together for the common good, things don't work as well. So we can't let people not pull their weight and not do their fair share of making this system work together." And you say, "Wait, you're talking all this vague garbage. What are you going to do to me if I don't pay for your services?" "Well, let's not get into that. If you pay, everything will be perfectly fine. I mean, I'm not saying things would be okay if you don't pay, but just pay and go along and everything will be just fine." And you say, "All right, kind of sounds like you're threatening me and it's time for you to leave." So you slam the door in his face. He comes back the next day and he says, I think you were right. It was rude of me to just say you have to pay for my services, but now you're really in charge. Now we will serve you." And you say, "Okay, good. So now I get to decide what services you provide?" "Well, no. We will still decide what services we provide." "Well, I decide the price I'm going to pay?" "No, we decide the price and you still have to pay it." "Well, that's the same as before. In what way am I in charge?" "Well, you see, each month I and my cousin Bubba will show up here at your front door, and you can choose which one of us is going to decide what services you need and how much it will cost for that month. Now, if you don't like the way it goes that month, next month we will come back and you can choose the other one who will decide what services we provide and how much it will cost you. So that really means that you're in charge. You're our boss because you get to choose between the two." "Well, what if I choose neither? What if I don't like either of your services?" "You're not even telling me what the services are. You say what it might be. Like, do you guarantee that you're going to feed me?" "Well, no, we don't guarantee that." "Do you guarantee that you're going to protect me from other people?" "No, we don't guarantee that." "Do you guarantee that you're not going to do things I don't even like? Never mind not doing what I want. Might you do things I'm morally opposed to?" "Well, yeah, we might." but you don't really have a choice. Again, everyone has to work together for the common good for this to work. And you say, I'm still not in charge, giving me a choice between two people robbing me. Oh, come on, don't call it robbing you. We're serving you. We're representing you. In fact, we are you. Because we're all in this together. And we're all going to be one big happy family. And if you just go along and pay what we say and we perform the services. And you say, no, you're still threatening me, slam the door in your face. And he comes back the next day and says, I don't think you all the way understood the situation. Maybe you're not clear on how this works. We're serving you. We're representing you. You are the customers. And you're the boss. And we do what you want. And if you don't go along with this, you're the bad guy for messing up the situation. We were all set to uphold our end of the bargain. And by living in this neighborhood, you agreed to go along with this. Because the other people go along with it. Because if they don't, there are adverse consequences to them. So you're the one causing trouble. I mean, we've been to all your neighbors' houses and told them, here's the way it is. And most of them have decided when they heard what the consequences were, that they're going along with it. So when you don't go along with it, you're the problem here. You're the one not pulling your weight. You're the one messing up our society by objecting to this and trying to get out of your responsibility to participate in this great system. And you say, you're insane, please leave. And you slam the door in his face. Here's the point. If that happened, if that guy showed up at anybody's door, just about everybody in the country would not only recognize that what he was saying was criminal, but downright insane. For someone to tell you, I'm going to decide what services you need, I'm going to decide the price, and you don't have a choice whether to support it, whether to pay for it, whether to go along with it. Now, guy comes back next week and says, okay, I understand that you don't really want to be coerced into this, you don't want to be forced to pay for it when you don't even know what the services are, but let me put it this way. Aren't there some of your neighbors that you may not like their habits, you may not like what they support, you may not like their attitude, you may not like what car they drive, whatever. You can suggest to us things about your neighbor that you wish were different, and we'll see what we can do to change that. And if you're a decent human being, you say, I don't want you terrorizing. You sound like the mafia. I don't want you terrorizing my neighbors. Leave my neighbors alone. Even the ones I don't particularly like. Leave them alone too. He says, well, are you sure? I mean, we don't like to do it too directly, but we could kind of take some of their money and get you something nice. Wouldn't you like that? It's like, no, you're just being the mafia. Leave them alone. Don't rob my neighbors. Even the ones that I don't particularly get along with, don't rob them either. He says, well, okay, but I got to tell you, not all of your neighbors said that. And so you're going to have to pay for some of the things that they want that you might not want, you might be morally opposed to, but you don't really have a choice because they went along with it. They asked us. We're representing them because they actually asked us to take your money to pay for things they want. So pay up. And again, you slam the door in his face. Again, the point is that in that context, everybody recognizes that the guy who shows up at your door and says that is the bad guy. He is acting uncivilized. He is not playing the way decent moral human beings play. It's a threat. It's extortion. It's the mafia. Now, if everybody recognizes that in that setting, you know, the admittedly silly hypothetical example I just gave that people chuckle at because they're so stupid, because nobody's going to do that. No private person is going to come say, I will decide what services to give you and I will decide the price and I'll hurt you if you don't pay. Why is it that just about 100% of people think that's ridiculous and would say, no, that wouldn't be okay? And almost 100% of people believe the exact same lie, as long as they are taught from when they're really young that this group is allowed to, because they're called the United States Congress. And when they say, we decide how much you're going to pay, and we decide what services to provide you, and we don't guarantee you anything. We don't guarantee you food, we don't guarantee you protection. and we can change the price whenever we want. We call it tax rates. And you can come to us as often as you want and tell us what you hope we will do, and we won't care. We'll do whatever we're going to do anyway. But you can come beg. You can say, can I please not quite pay you as much? And we'll say, no, you have to pay us more. And we'll call it raising tax rates. And people say, well, oh well. And if you resist and say, this is bogus, they don't have the right to do this, your neighbors will often say, you're messing up the game. Because that guy who showed up at your front door, who's acting like the mafia, you're not playing along. I play along. When he shows up at my front door, I give him my money and let him boss me around and do whatever he says. That makes me good. It makes you bad. Now, who on earth would say that if it wasn't the government that we've been trained to recognize as a rightful authority? If it was just some guy off the street. Nobody would take pride in going along with the random guy who shows up at their door and tries to rule them. Which is why we are trained from when we're very small to imagine it's okay when this certain gang that has really big buildings, and it looks really fancy, and they do big rituals, so it must be legitimate. And that's the only reason we accept it. It's the same reason little kids believe in Santa Claus, because they heard it when they were really young, and they heard it over and over again. Most kids, some didn't. And they think, well, if everybody believes it, it's got to be true. The belief in government is provably no more rational than the belief in Santa Claus. Trouble is all the adults still believe, or most of them. But the amazing thing is that it is not that people naturally want to be dominated, or want government, or want to be robbed. They don't want that guy who shows up at the front door. They don't say, I'm so glad you're here to force things on me and to make me pay for whatever you say I need, and not even give me a choice, and threaten to hurt me if I don't pay for whatever you decide to do, at whatever price you decide to do it. Normal people would never go along with that, and there's a reason for that. Normal people are anarchists until they are trained to imagine that a certain guy, if he shows up at your door and says, I'm with the IRS, he doesn't just say, I'm with some business. I'm with the IRS, or I'm with the FBI, or I'm with the police. State, federal, local, it doesn't matter. We are trained to believe that certain gangs, it's okay if they do this utterly insane, immoral thing. But if your neighbor did the same thing, made the same deals and the same threats, nobody would accept it as legitimate. Now, the title of this talk is Government is Not Your Friend. And some people will assume it's, well, government does corrupt things and it does bad things. That's not at all my point. That guy who shows up at your front door, even if he does something nice to you, he brings you a sandwich after he demands money from you and threatens you, that doesn't make the arrangement okay. That guy will never be your friend. And that guy is never going to show up to your front door with your best interest at heart. I mean, how much more obvious could that be? If somebody comes up to you that you don't know and says, I want permission to control your life and take your money and interfere with your interactions with other human beings, do you really believe that this stranger is doing it because he wants what's best for you? Of course not. And nobody would think otherwise if it was just some guy in the street. But we're trained to imagine, or at least delusionally hope, that the people in government are controlling us and stealing our money for our benefit. But it's utterly insane. When people say, well, if we elect, that guy sounds so sincere, and if we elect the right person, he really sounds like he cares. If somebody cares about you, they will not try to violently control you. I think that's pretty obvious. And we have to be trained from childhood to imagine an exception to ever think otherwise. And the funny thing is a lot of people will say, well, I'm scared of the market and free exchange because I'm not sure it'll handle this right. So I want government, not the guy who shows up and says, here's my price for this service, you can take it or leave it, I'm not going to hurt you either way. To be scared of him, but not to be scared of the guy who says, I'll decide what service is and I'll decide the price and you have to take it or I hurt you. To think that that guy has your interests at heart more than the other guy is just loony. But the trick they use to make anybody buy it is they say, well, how about if we use it on other people? Like, I know you're not going to come to me and say, please boss me around. Who would do that? But wouldn't you like it if we could control your neighbor and make him not have those habits? Yeah, he drinks a little too much. Well, we'll make it so he can't drink. He might play his music too loud, or he might have a car. He has a car that's fancier than yours and more expensive, and that's not really fair. So we'll take some of his money and give it to you, and you can get a better car, and he'll have to sell his car. And the temptation to use power to control the other guy is why 99% of people fall for the lie of government. The guy shows up at the door and wants to boss you around. People say, I don't want you to boss me around. But if they say, well, we can take your neighbor's stuff, we can boss him around, we can make him be the way you know he should be. And everybody who votes falls for that. Everybody who votes falls for that. That I'm going to vote for the guy who's going to fund what should be funded. And how does that work? Well, he's going to take the money from them. He's going to take my money too. But hey, if it happens to be what I want to have happen, whether it's helping the poor or having a police force, whatever it is, you know darn well the guy you're voting for isn't only going to tax you, he's going to tax the other people who disagree with you. So when everybody runs to the voting booth and tries to get their guy to win, they're not pressing that button or flipping the lever hoping the other guy will win. They want their guy to win because they want their values and preferences and what they care about forced on the other guy. And the guy who shows up at your front door, that's the only reason he has any power, is because it is so tempting to fall for that lie that, hey, we can make the world better, we can make it what it should be, if you give me the power to control them and to make them hand over money to take care of the poor, to pay for defense, or whatever you think is important. Just give me the power, and I will make your neighbor behave the way you know he ought to. And as long as people fall for that, the whole world loses except the ruling class. And the only way we ever get out of that is when all the decent people recognize that government cannot be your friend. The guy at the front door, in that arrangement, that can never be your friend, even if he gives you stolen loot from your neighbor. Yeah, your wallet may look better because government took somebody else's money and gave it to you. That does not help society any more than you going to your neighbor and robbing him yourself, which would at least be honest. The people in government, when they are giving handouts, when they are giving, we're going to help the poor, we're going to do Social Security and help the retired, and we're going to do this, don't ever imagine for a moment that somebody who would force their agenda on you is doing it for your benefit. When you get a check from the government, there's one reason you're getting that. They are buying your loyalty with somebody else's money. And when we fall for that, we are the ones giving them power, not only over the neighbors that we want violently controlled, but over ourselves. If you and your neighbor, if that guy comes to your front door and then comes to his front door, and you both say, yeah, I like this deal, but take more of his money, tell him what to do. And your neighbor is saying the same thing about you. No, make him fund the things I care about. Here's this charity I want him to give to, and here's this program I want him to fund. It puts us at war with each other forever, and the only way out of that is for people to recognize that that guy who shows up at your front door is the enemy of humanity. And what every decent, moral human being has to do is say, go away, I don't want you controlling me, and I don't want you controlling my neighbor. And even if my neighbor is obnoxious, I don't particularly like him, we don't get along, we hardly ever talk, if you try to rob him, even if you say it's for something I want, I'm on his side, not yours. When that happens, that is the beginning of freedom, and it is the end of government. Now the concept, the term anarchy, makes people freak out. Because a lot of people have been trained to mix the two meanings together. One meaning is chaos and mayhem. The other meaning is, what it actually literally means, is rule by no one. Anarchy is like monarchy is rule by one. Anarchy is rule by none. Rule by no one. It doesn't mean chaos and mayhem. It doesn't mean Molotov cocktails through windows. It means there isn't the guy at the front door bossing everybody around and forcibly controlling people's lives. And that's all it means. And it's so funny to me, well, funny and frustrating, that people have this idea in their head that anarchy means we're going to like mess up society. We're not going to be organized and we're not going to cooperate. All it means is we're not going to go along with the guy who shows up at the front door and says, I want to control everybody. You can still cooperate with your neighbor and trade stuff and organize whatever you want. 2 people can organize, 2 billion people can organize. The one thing you can't do is say, we have special rights. We get to force other people into our organization. We get to force other people to pay for what we care about. And that's the only thing that anarchy removes from society, is the illusion that certain people have the right to initiate violence. And that's all. And it's so amazing to me that the authoritarian propaganda has convinced so many people that chaos is what's going to result from telling those people, no, you don't get to violently control us. Imagine the lunacy of the logic that we are trained to believe, that telling that group of people, you don't get to violently dominate us, that is going to lead to bloodshed and mayhem. And even if you open a history book, and I love to do this when people say, oh, if there weren't government, everything would be way worse. If we didn't accept that guy at the front door, for some reason we'd be killing and eating each other. That would just be utter chaos. And I say, okay, well, let's play a game. You start citing some examples of like large-scale injustices and murder that resulted from a lack of authority, also known as anarchy, and I'll start listing some that resulted from authority. Every war, Mao Zedong, 42 million dead, Joseph Stalin, 20 or 30 million dead, the Nazi regime, Pol Pot, every authoritarian empire. And despite the fact that literally more than 200 million human beings have been murdered by their own governments, not including war, you can pile on the war statistics on top of that, people still believe that government, the thing responsible for that, is what keeps us civilized. It's utterly insane, which is why they have to start teaching it to us when we're just barely old enough to understand the words. Because if you grew up in a free society and that guy showed up at your front door, everybody would not only recognize his suggestions as immoral and stupid, they would think he was insane. Wouldn't you think someone was insane if he was a normal person who showed up and said, I'm going to control you, I will decide what services you get, and I'm going to make you pay for them, and I'm going to hurt you if you don't go along with it. Like, okay, you're dangerous and you're out of your mind. Well, you have to choose between 2 of us. Now is it okay? Because now it's democracy. And now it's great. And that's what we have to spread around the world. The idea that if me and Bubba show up at your front door and let you decide which one of us is going to violently dominate you, that means you're in charge. That's just as good as being free. And nobody in that context would fall for that. That's not the same as being free. That's choosing which robber is going to rob me. And yet, millions and millions and millions of people are genuinely, profoundly, emotionally attached to democracy because they think it equals freedom and civilization, when it's the exact opposite. And again, the beauty of the situation, the horror of the situation is the mass injustice that people not only go along with, but that they vote for, thinking this is the system, this is what we need. Again, that guy at the front door who says, you won't possibly be able to live without my services. How many people really and truly believe that human society cannot live without a ruling class, without government? It's a lot of people, which means they really believe that, like, we in this room could not possibly interact on a peaceful basis without that guy showing up who gets to threaten us all and steal our money. I don't see that guy here, and so far we seem to be getting along pretty well. But we're trained to imagine an exception. And that's why there's actually hope. Because in any other context, we all recognize the excuses for government as completely insane. We have to be trained when we're really young to see that in this case it's necessary. Because they have constitutions, and they have elections, and they have those really big buildings, and they have lots of law books, and they sound so official, and you watch CNN and they say big words and they dress in suits, so it must be legitimate. It isn't just some loony at your front door saying you do what I say or I hurt you. It looks so professional. It looks like, the inauguration. It looks like the crowning of a king. There's a reason for that. because divine right of kings was a little bit too stupid to be for people to fall for anymore. They changed it to divine right of politicians. Most people still fall for it. Because if you do big rituals, it must be real. There must be something to this. They wouldn't do all this just based on made-up powers that they just claim to have. Well, yeah, they would, and yeah, they did. And the only reason it works is because we fall for it. But again, the beauty is that people are naturally anarchists. And that doesn't mean they throw bombs through windows. It means they want voluntary interaction. They don't want the guy showing up and saying, I'm your master, I'm going to boss you around. They want to be able to go to a supermarket and say, I want that and that, and I would have bought that, but it's a little bit too expensive, so I'll just have these. And then you go to the counter and you do a voluntary transaction. You didn't have to buy anything. They didn't have to sell you anything. You do the deal. They get a little bit of money. You get some food or whatever you bought. You go away. Thank you. On the brink of death there. And guess what? There's a word for that. It's called anarchism. The more specific term for it is voluntarism. And a lot of people say you should use voluntarism and not anarchism because that word is scary. And to a certain extent I agree, except usually if you start explaining voluntarism, someone will say, you mean like anarchism, no government? So I'll just start with the term that freaks them out and then explain why it shouldn't freak you out to say that guy at your front door, it's not okay that he's doing that. And really, that is all the term means. When somebody says, I get to be your rightful Lord and Master for your own good, all anarchism means is, I don't believe you. I don't believe you want to violently dominate me for my own good. What kind of bogus claim is that? It's like a carjacker saying, this is for your own good. Can I have your car, please? Nobody would fall for that unless you do these big rituals and have massive propaganda from the time kids are tiny little kids. You pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic, which is a ruling class, for which it stands, before they even know what the words are saying, what the words mean. And so, again, the reason that there is hope is this is not what people naturally choose. That's not the form of interaction they naturally choose. They choose voluntarism, which is, I don't want to attack my neighbor. I don't want him to attack me. I want us to get along. I might not even like him. I might just kind of avoid him and he'll avoid me, and that's okay. If we don't attack each other, we don't care. If we like each other, we'll deal with the people I like and he can deal with the people he likes. Now, one scenario that I've done a bunch of times when I do longer events, I don't have time to do the in-depth version now, is I will say, imagine that the people in this room, we were on a boat or a plane or whatever, crashed into a deserted island. We're it. We're all the people in the world right now. There's no authority, there's no 911, there's no cops, there's no courts, there's no representative to call. And I say, imagine this is the scenario, and most of us don't know the rest of us. And we don't know who we can trust. I mean, there may be a couple of feds in here, and I wouldn't nearly trust them. And so I say, well, what would we do? Imagine that we're it. There is no cop-out available to say, well, we'll let authority handle it. Well, there isn't any. We're just sitting on an island. We're just people. What do we do? And I would go through, in these events I did before, I would go through in detail the different scenarios. The first one is always, well, one guy says, well, I think we need leadership here. People say, okay, maybe. What do you mean? I mean, I'm in charge. I get to tell everybody what to do, and I get to hurt anybody who disobeys me. And so I'll ask, who in this crowd would be for that? Nobody. I have yet for anybody to say, I'm for that. That's government. So in that setting, nobody I've ever met at these events has been in favor of government. When I say, well, how about if somebody stands up and says, well, I happen to teach a course on survival, and I know how to build huts that actually keep the rain out, and I know how to start a fire without. And if people want to help out, I'll help you build your shelter if you help me build mine.